In alhamdulillah, wa salat, wa salam ala wa rasulullah. I'd like to welcome everybody to our series with Dr. Daniel Abdul Rahman McBride. He is a doctor, but tonight what he's going to be speaking about are the 5 things about the right brain, right? 5 ways that we can really utilize the right brain. I'm a right brain person, but I just found out I got some good stuff on the left brain too.
This is bilateral.
I'm bilateral. But alhamdulillah, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. McBride. And remember, guys, anyone who wants to join the Zoom room for questions or to contribute, you can join it at www.sunnahfollowers.net, where the finger is pointing there. And you can use the mic. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McBride.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Today what we're going to do, as the sister mentioned, we're going to be talking about the right brain, or the right hemisphere in particular, my right. We're going to be talking about the right hemisphere in particular today. Obviously, hopefully most of us, all of us, inshallah, have both hemispheres. And they both really cool, really strong function on both sides. And that is obviously the ideal. As a side note, when we talk about the right brain, an example, in this case, I'm going to use Albert Einstein. Everybody, we always talk about how a genius this guy was, blah, 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 blah. Until about the age of 16, Albert Einstein was labeled as special ed. Back in the day, back when he was a child, they actually still used the word retarded. And they thought he was so low-level functioning, he couldn't get it. They literally labeled him retarded until he was about mid-teens, maybe 16, if I remember the history correctly. Come to find out, once he got out of that very structured style of teaching, he blossomed. He turned out to be a right brain genius, even though he was also skilled at playing the violin. And that's what he would take as a study break, was musical instruments. When he had to figure something out, he'd walk away from it for a little while, let his brain soak it up, put it together, and then he'd have these aha or eureka moments. So Albert Einstein is actually considered a right brain genius. And believe it or not, it was posterior right is the only area in his brain that is actually a teeny tiny bit larger, wasn't like a whole hemisphere, larger than most everyone else's. And that's the area he self-described. What he did was he pictured stuff, and he could actually turn it around and look at the problem in a picture format from the other side, from every angle he needed to see it. And now in today's science, we know that is this area of your brain. But he was considered a right brain genius. Most people we think about memorize well, learn well, study hard, blah, 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 blah. And they are considered, most geniuses are considered left brain. In Einstein's case, he was actually a right brain genius, and he was very good at visual spatial, along with doing these math problems. What we're going to do today then is talk about some of the strengths of being right brain. One of the things most people immediately associate with a right brain strength is emotions and empathy. And that is true. Most of our emotions fall or are generated from the right side of our brain, our understanding of things. It's really important to understand that along with emotions of the right brain, which would be self-awareness, this way you're aware, this way based on what you know about yourself, you can apply it to other people. People that aren't self-aware, like the people we describe, will say, man, I can't believe they just don't know. They don't see that in themselves. They're not very self-aware. That's a left brain attribute. But the main emotions, well, let's talk about the left brain for just a second. Happiness, surprise, and anger, and maybe a little bit of joy for getting your own way. Left brain happiness, left brain happiness. At the extreme, you're happy you got your way. The surprise part, you're surprised you didn't get your way. And then the anger part, you get really angry and frustrated about it. A classic example of a very corrupt what I would describe as a non-professional, non-psychiatrist, non-psychologist is our reelected white guy. You can see this guy is, I would describe him as so out of touch. You only see him happy that he got his way. He's pushing through. He gets angry all the time when he doesn't get his way. He can't believe some of the things he says aren't super intelligent. He thinks he's the smartest person he knows. He even brags about not reading and not bringing in new information, right? Because he's so self-involved. And that's a big difference between left brain people and right brain people. Left brain people tend to be very self-involved. Right brain people are very self-aware and then more aware of their social, or more involved socially. Left brain people tend to be very, very selfish, contradicting that with right brain people tend to need very, very social environments. And that's important because self-awareness, if I understand my emotions and I understand what my face looks like when I'm happy, I understand, and if you watch babies, you can see they're very movement and very facially aware. They really love watching their parents' expressions. It's really interesting also that most mothers, studies show most parents, right-handed or left-handed, because you'd say, well, they hold them to the left because, in the left hand, because that frees up the right hand, and most people are right-hand dominant, blah, 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 blah. Studies show left-hand dominant people also tend to hold their babies on their left side, left-handed or right-handed. The predominance is holding a child, cradling the child on the left side. Most mothers, when they breastfeed, will breastfeed from the left side first. What that does is that signifies, or that can acknowledge, that can show you that in a relationship, you're reading your baby, you're paying attention to the baby, you're trying to figure out whether your baby's happy or sad, you're trying to convey emotion for you, and you're trying to understand the baby's emotions, right? For you, you are actually looking from the left side, your left field of vision, which stimulates the right hemisphere. And this is reinforcing your desire to be social, your desire to fit in with your community, or your desire to bond. Those emotions on the right side of the brain. Like I said, the left is happiness, surprise, anger. So with that in mind, one of the biggest things about the right brain is self-awareness. So what I'll do is I'll talk about the strengths first, then we'll jump back and review what could then be a weakness. So you've got empathy. So let's start with self-awareness, which allows you to have empathy and understand what other people are feeling and doing. With that, being self-aware, you become almost self-critical. You're also hyper-aware of your surroundings. It's really important, if I can give you an example, and I'll probably repeat it on our left brain lecture. Imagine back in the African savannah, or in the woods here in America, before we chopped all these trees down, before the Europeans got here. Imagine you're hunting out in the woods and you're looking for dinner, or you're northeastern, where I grew up in the northeast of the US. They used to have this thing, some of the tribes, the Native Americans, the first people here, they used to have this thing where some of the tribes, the young men would have to sneak up and touch a bear and run away and survive, right? That was your manhood thing. So imagine if that's not a myth and a true story. Think about what happens. You're out searching through the woods or the African savanna, the tall grass. I mean, you can't see anything. This stuff is like here. And in the woods, you can't see through it because it's so dense. And in the woods, you hear this snap next to you. Well, being very social and very aware, which means aware of your surroundings also. That's part of the social stuff. You want to see how you fit into the community, how you fit into the room. Imagine you hear the noise, boop, you look over, you start paying attention to it. You're very aware of your surroundings, because like in the African savannah, the right brain and left brain are going to see the grass move with the lion crouched, stalking, right? And then it freezes. The grass doesn't move anymore. The right brain has a very It's called global, and it can also be sustained global attention. The right brain will look over and pay attention to that savanna, that grass. The right brain will look over and make sure that bear's not hunting them, that they are still the hunter. In the savanna, the right brain hunter will pay attention to that grass, even though it's not moving anymore. The right brain will, again, make sure they are the hunter, not the hunted. The left brain, very reward driven, short-term attention span or focused attention. It looks over, I'm hunting, no reward, looks away. The right brain pays attention to make sure that lion, that the hyenas, they don't sneak up on it, right? So that's how the left brain and right brain person work together. Short-term, goal-oriented, striving, achieving something. The right brain, more global, more big picture. And that's how then you can go into society. You walk into the room, you want to measure the room. Your boss is there, some coworkers are there. What are the dynamics? How do I fit in and become socially acceptable in this environment? Because back in the day, if you got pushed out of the village, you got pushed out of the tribe, you were at a huge risk of not surviving. So self-awareness lays down the foundation for once you understand yourself and your own feelings, you understand how that fits into everyone else. Now, when I see you smile, I understand you're happy. Or, for example, if you smile and I see the smile doesn't reach the eyes don't react, they don't crease, they don't do anything, then if I'm good with a right brain and weighing in on facial expressions, I see there's a hesitation. It doesn't reach the whole face, these political smiles. If it doesn't reach the eyes, I know it's probably a fake smile. It's a guarded smile. It's a pretend smile. So now I pay attention to see why they're faking and what they're trying to cover up to see if I'm safe in that environment. That's the self-aware leading into the social awareness. The three emotions on the left we discussed. Imagine then what are on the right. And even though these are right brain and fitting in with society, think about it when I say them. Imagine if you're overly self-aware, overly self-critical. Now you start bleeding into a strong sense of embarrassment, shame, guilt. Imagine disgust. Something smells horrible. Oh, that's disgusting. Well, then you don't go eat it. Rotted meat, rotted fruit, you know not to eat it. Okay. These will all keep you alive. But at the same time, those same emotions, you want to avoid being embarrassed. You want to avoid doing something shameful. You might feel guilty about it. So that helps the frontal lobe prevent you from doing something that might get you pushed out of your tribe, your village, your community. So self-awareness leading into the right brain skill of socialization and social fitting in is a huge foundational understanding of the right brain. And that's why a strong right brain without a balanced left, these people, that's where most depressions come from, is a super strong right brain. Because if you're super strong without the balanced left, then you start feeling guilty about everything. You start criticizing everything you do. We talked about this before. A lot of people with a strong right brain, believe it or not, they'll maintain eye contact, but then they try to look away. They try to avoid what we call focusing on each other because it's too strong. They'll criticize themselves. A lot of these superstars, these songwriters, these famous entertainers, even famous athletes, strong athletes, a strong athletic potential, the right brain controls the large muscle groups, which tends to push you towards athletics. They wear sunglasses because they don't like the contact. They know what your eyes mean, and they think you can read them even more by looking at their eyes. So that's hugely important, the strong right brain. So a survival skill, trying to socialize, if unchecked, can push you right over into all this self-criticism stuff. Self-aware can move into self-critical. But at the same time, if it's balanced, awareness, global attention can also help keep you alive and get a better understanding of what's going on around you. These are the big picture thinkers. There's a real good book. Actually, I'm working in it right now for another project I'm doing. It's called The Master and His Emissary. The right brain is the master. That's the global, that's the goal setting, that's the big picture thing. And then the left brain is the small, the goal achievement. When we talked about Ramadan, we talk about what I'm going to have for breakfast tomorrow. What time do I have to get up? What time do I have to finish eating? I've got to pray. I've got to do. Then what am I going to do? What time does dinner come in? Or what time do I break fast? Then you move through and you literally, your left brain takes over to set up your daily, weekly, and then your right brain says it's a short-term goal because it's only 30 days, but your right brain is successfully completing Ramadan, while your left brain kicks in and does the moment by moment, day to day actions. Then we also have, like I said, the more self-aware you are without being selfish and self-involved. That's a left brain issue. The more self-aware you are, the more likely you are, along with empathy, along with understanding people, is to develop empathy. Because now there's something called a theory of mind. The theory of mind is when you can actually put yourself in other people's shoes, so to speak. You can actually understand what they may be feeling based on how it would make you feel. You can understand what they're thinking. You can pick up on the train of thought. There's a lot of research that shows friends, married couples, family members, my kids and I, we start talking. Not that I talk a lot, but we start talking and my kids will finish my sentences for me, or they'll add to the idea, because the same thing I'm talking about now, I spend a lot of time talking to them about. I really think this brain stuff is critical to avoiding. Say you're a right brain, and one of the things you realize is, holy cow, my strength is self-awareness. That helps me be a good social, a good friend, good empathetic. But wow, I self-criticize myself a lot. I criticize myself a lot. Well, the thing is, that's just a demonstration of your right brain skill. And if you understand that, and as we add the left brain talk next week, as you understand that, rather than criticizing yourself for it, look at it as a strength. Holy cow, yes, I'm self-critical. I got to work out of that. But that means I'm very self-aware, and I usually pick up on other people, and I feel a lot of empathy for other people. I donate to charity for other people. There's a lot of good things with that. And then what you do is, if you're really overly self-critical, then what you can do is, since you know that's a strength, that usually means you're more emotional and less logical, and you let that emotional side take over. Well, what you can do is move it over. That's why I was talking to my older son today, and we're talking about something, and I mentioned research shows one of the things about journaling is you're actually taking a mechanical action. So you're moving it from just a thought out to you're taking an action step to get rid of it. And then what you do is you list, for example, you list all the good things about being self-critical. You take care of yourself, you avoid smelling bad. You make sure you're at the top of your game, hopefully. At the same time, you can also write down, what can I do to stay self-aware, but what steps could I take to avoid being self-critical? So you write down all the strengths of that, of being self-aware. Does that make sense? So now you're moving it from just an understanding, a feeling, over to, here's a couple of action steps I'm going to do. Every time I start to be self-critical, I'm going to write down another reason why being self-aware, empathetic, emotional is a strong point. Now you bring in the logical side and you control that, and you train up your left brain to match your right brain. Because you definitely, if you can be 130 IQ, 140 IQ or more, man, that's genius level. Because high emotions, you may be 100 over here, but then your logical, your verbal skills, they may be a little bit lower. So you're lower here, so you test out as average, but you're actually a right brain genius. Like Einstein was a right brain genius. He had huge, gigantic, strong right brain skills, but he wasn't really good with that structured, pay attention to every assignment, get everything right, spell every word right. He was too busy thinking about the big picture, wasn't he? So he was a genius, but he didn't test out well. Moving your strong right over onto the left side and figuring things out, writing things down, taking action, brings that immediate short-term left brain skill set in. What's really cool with awareness and that global attention that the right brain has, that pays attention to everything. That's why, like I said, in hunting, that's a real cool skill set, right? And you're focused on, oh, and you're focused on. The problem with that is imagine you're a school student and you're in a school that you sit near the windows. Your strength is global attention. Your strength is your being aware of your surroundings. Now, imagine I'm going to cover strengths and weaknesses at the same time, apparently. Imagine what would be the weakness there. Think about it. The kid's global attention. Whoa, something went by in the window. Now you're watching it. You hear the brakes because it's a public school and it's near a street. You're trying to take a test. Every time the kid across the hall sneezes or fidgets, you look up to see what's going on. You have to come back and you have to focus down again. Think about how distracting the environment can be for a child or an adult, a child or an adult that has a very strong right brain skill set and everything. They're not losing attention. They just have such a broad attention span in terms of distance rather than length of time. But at the same time, a strong right brain with the word inhibition, or a balanced right and left, the word inhibition comes from the right, because that's also, remember, embarrassment, disgust, shame, guilt. So the right brain tends to inhibit inappropriate behavior, fit in socially. Well, the right brain will also inhibit distraction when it's balanced with the left. Now you've got a kid that is told to take a test. He hears noises, but the test is more important. You see what I'm saying? So a balanced right and left, the right brain inhibits fading over to the distractions and stays focused right here. And it is really good for long-term attention, that 100, 200 question test. Woo, I got to tell you, when we started hitting 100 and 200 questions with a test, man, even though I've got a lot of schooling in my background, it was hard because I'd start thinking about other stuff. I'd start to lose focus. I had to remind myself how important this was. And imagine what takes place in a teaching environment, not even a test. The teacher says, okay, look up at me. So now I pay attention to the teacher. Now the teacher says, okay, read that passage. Now look up at me again. Look at the chalkboard, write that down, look up, write down. Man, that is hard for a person that is a right brain, because now, strong right brain, weak left. It's hard for them to shift focused attention back and forth, if that makes sense, when it's weak like that. Because the minute I look up, now I'm distracted, I'm looking around, I've got to come back down and try to focus in, and this side's already weak. Does that make sense? So that awareness for socialization, that self-awareness, can move out into self-criticism, the awareness in your environment for safety and for figuring things out could also move out into gigantic distractions, can't focus on anything. And that's a huge mislabeling with the fidgety kid. I mean, with the attention, what we say, oh, he can't pay attention in class, when in actuality, he's paying attention to everything. So if you're that person or you have that child or children, then what you do is you narrow down the distractions. If you've got one kid that has that issue and you have 4 kids in your house, though, the other 3 kids cannot be listening to the TV and clowning around right in the other room. They have to be quiet. They have to be less distracting, because that child with a strong global attention is going to be, oh, what are they doing? Oh my God, it sounds like, holy cow, I hope he's okay. Oh, I heard a scream. Is my little brother, my older sister, is everybody okay? Does that make sense? So if you're aware of this, like I tell my kids and darn near everybody I know, if you're aware of this, now you can figure out tactics, and you'll get more when we talk about left brain on the next week, inshallah. You put these two together and you figure out what strengths are. You also see then that could become a weakness. Like I tell people, most people's strengths are also their weaknesses. So you can see how I can take the left brain and the right brain. If I'm more right brain dominant, then I've got to start using some things to train up my left brain. If I'm more left brain dominant, less emotionally involved, more focused. Your spouse gets mad at you because you focus real hard when you have something to do, but then you seem like you don't pay attention to the family. You may not know how to show that you love them other than to bring home the paycheck, or other than to clean the house, or other than what you do. So the more we know right brain, left brain, the more we can put it together and we can be happy, cohesive community. Now, I already talked about the global attention. What's really cool with global attention is the empathy and the social and the awareness, the global awareness, is the right brain starts everything. The right brain is always on. If you haven't been to a previous talk, the right brain is always on. It always wants to survive. Everything that comes in through the right brain, right hemisphere. Then the right brain may target something to pay attention to and tell the left brain to do that. Or if you walk into a room, social, for example, the right brain, you walk in, everybody's having a good time, socially, okay. It pushes it over to the left brain and says, okay, we're safe. Now try to fit in. Now the left brain will start looking at every individual part. That person over there, oh, are they smiling? Are they happy? Are they talking loud? Are they talking sad? So that I fit in with that part of this event. Then it'll look over here, fit in with that part of this event, fit in with that part of this couple. Who's in charge tonight? Who should I talk to? Who should I pay attention to? What should I do and say? That's the left brain breaking things down, and we'll talk more about that next week. So imagine now what takes place with that. Which side, let me ask you, which side, right or left, would be your misinformation detection system? Think to yourself. You can even type it in if you're feeling strong and brave today. Which side is your, what they call in society, which side is your BS detector? Which side picks up on misleading information? Which side picks up on the deception? It's going to be the right side, because the right side actually thinks outside of itself. The right side actually puts things together from a looser perspective, right? It's aware of its surroundings. It's one of these things where it picks up sarcasm. It understands sarcasm and metaphors. It picks up the BS. If I want to convince you that the lie is the truth, you do two things. And hopefully all of you learn from this, to catch everybody that's trying to deceive you. Don't use it against people. That's not right. But the idea is, if I can get you emotionally involved in the subject, if I can stimulate fear in particular, fear is very, very motivating. Fear and pain, right? If I can get you fearful, stimulate that amygdala and the fear part of everything, and then I throw, whether it's true or not, I just throw pieces of information at you. Like, embarrassingly enough, that whole thing about that Haitian community, I think it was up in Ohio or somewhere up there, the Haitian members of the community, and someone got it on picture showing a man carrying a duck he caught, or some kind of an animal. And of course, the picture was true. Here's a guy, maybe he's carrying the dead duck, maybe he bought it and killed it himself for dinner, whatever the case is. Maybe if he found it along the side of the road and he's going to take care of it. It doesn't matter the why. The fact is, it was true. There's the fact of it. That appeals to the left brain. Then what they did, oh my God, look, they're taking over. They're going to kill your animals. They're going to eat all your cats. They're going to eat your dogs, blah, 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 blah. So what they did was they stimulated, they brought in what could be a global, it's a truth, but then they threw in the fear. They threw in a truth, a fact, logic, but they surrounded it with fear. Now they can actually do lie, 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 lie. If I can stimulate your left brain, particularly with fear and compartmentalization, linear thinking, we already know your prejudice against non-white people, the reelected white guy's base. You're already prejudiced against non-white people. So now I'm going to throw this in there and I'm going to further stimulate your fear. Now you're a follower. The left brain does not pick up on truth or falsehood. The left brain only goes with what it knows, what it sees. It's the right brain that is the BS meter, is the misinformation meter. So when you look at something, the first thing you should do is ask why, not what. That's a left brain thing. Ask why. What's the big picture? If you're reading, for example, autistic ADHD, and as the sister was saying, generally, not her, but generally speaking, photographic memories. You've got that step by step. You understand, you parted it out, you brought all those parts back in, and you understand how they fit together, and you can memorize because letters are part of words, and you recognize and stored that. Words are part of sentences. You recognize and stored that, but you didn't get the understanding. Does that make sense? So the right brain has this global picture, this global understanding, this global awareness. The right brain is aware of things outside of itself based on its own self-awareness. The left brain then is very selfish and very self-involved and not very self-aware. I mean, like our reelected white guy, who says the things he says and isn't embarrassed, ashamed, and is disgusted as so many of us are, right? And then finally, and that's all part of that global attention, wide vision, worldview, outside yourself based on your own good self-awareness. Finally, we've got, with being a misinformation detector, one of the reasons, or the strongest reason for that, is your right brain is also your morality, is your moral guidance based on that awareness, that empathy, that feeling for others, that what I talked about as the theory of mind. You understand that the harmful things you say, you do, you wouldn't want it to happen to you, so you don't do it to others. There's the empathy part. Does that make sense? So the morality is also on the right side. Now, left brain people can be moral too. I'm not saying they're not. But what takes place is with a corrupt left brain, like our reelected white guy, he is so corrupt. You can see there's no moral code in there. He's just self-involved, not self-aware. It's like I said, and everything he comes up with, since he doesn't bring in outside information, he doesn't read, he doesn't like that stuff. He wants facts, he wants mechanisms. The only thing he pays attention to is what he can accumulate and what is useful to him right now. And his big picture goal is just to accumulate more and stay in the news, for example. He loves being a video, reality star, right? Everything's a reality show to him. And it's all fake. It's all made up. He doesn't have issues with that. The right brain likes reality, believe it or not. The left brain likes the artificial. The left brain is VR, creating, human-made, creating your own reality, not reality itself. Does that make sense? So with those, I'll summarize real quick. With those, we'll open it up to questions. The first one was the right brain strength is self-awareness, which leads you into social awareness, which leads you into empathy and theory of mind, which is really cool. The third is the misinformation detector. It's also the global awareness, global attention, and the morality. The right brain is your moral code, your moral guide. Does anyone have any questions about what we've just talked about or anything we've previously talked about? You can certainly type them in and the sister will read them to me.
I have a question.
Yes, Sister Layla. Is that Brother Efnan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm a right brain thinker.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes when I listen to lectures, I try to visualize what I'm sorry. Let me
Try to visualize what they're saying and create pictures.
What they're saying, and then sometimes whenever I try to visualize, I get caught up of what my vision is of what I'm visualizing, and I miss the whole lecture. I was thinking, do you have any like strategies for me to do to stay focused, or to not try to visualize, but just try to, I don't know.
What I would say is one of the biggest, let me just say it this way. One of the biggest problems is, for example, right brain, left brain. That's, you definitely, I can agree that's probably right brain. You try to visualize it, you put this picture together, then you start trying to put the picture together, and you get lost in the importance of why you were putting the picture together. It was based on his talk. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
what you do is, rather than fighting against that, what you want to do is, while you are trying, because I got to tell you, sister, I use a lot of I and me because I'm afraid of talking about someone else and gossiping or saying something they didn't want me to share. But as a side note, I'll mention, when you hear someone say I and me a lot, or if they reference we, but it's a very teeny tiny thing, that's usually a left brain indicator. Be careful. But I'll say I had that same issue. When I was going through high school, when I was going through undergraduate school, I had a big issue with, I'd want to sit in the back. I didn't want to sit in the middle, and I didn't want to sit up front, because believe it or not, I was probably overly self-critical, and I didn't like having people behind me. So I couldn't tell what they were thinking, right? When I went to chiropractic school, it occurred to me, alhamdulillah, that I couldn't sit in the back because I'm so easily distracted. I literally sat in one of the first 3 rows so that I could look at the teacher, I could look at the board, I could look at the teacher, and I could look at the board to tighten up my thought process. And God forbid I'm sitting in the back and I'm trying to pay attention to him. And like you say, he's so far away, he or she, they're so far away from me that now I'm easily distracted, because there was, for me, if this works for you, there was no immediacy. I wasn't as connected as compared to sitting right in front of him or her. And especially the more boring they were, the more I wanted to be up front, because I was so self-aware and so easily distracted that I figured if the teacher could see me, most teachers talk right up front, right? If the teacher could see me, I had to pay attention to them. Does that make sense? So that allowed me not to wander as much in my mind, if this works for you. And I literally was right up front, so I didn't have to. I also, it helped me be self-aware, self-critical. Oh my God, does he see me fading out? Does he see me not paying attention? Is she getting mad at me because she's looking at me a lot? I'm getting nervous, so I concentrate more. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because I got to tell you, that right brain picturing thing, do not forget Einstein. In terms of like modern intellectuals, Einstein was a right brain genius, and he bragged, or he described, they often asked him what was his skill set, and he said, I don't know, I just look at things from every side. That's what I was talking to my son about this today. He has the ability to look at everything from everything. And I said, man, I may be right brain, but I'm not that right brained. I can't look at it from the other side, if that makes sense. I like the picture, but I can't see the shape on the other side. You may want to literally move up in the class, or if you're on your computer, sit down and focus and lean in and do body language stuff that trains that in, or write things down as you're trying to picture it. Write down what's being said, and that may allow you, because when you start using words, verbal is very much a left brain activation. You focus on the words, and that will help stimulate your left brain, and maybe you can train it in for more focused attention rather than global attention and picturing everything.
I tried I'm sorry. I was going to say, I tried the writing, but then I started writing and I was like, okay, this is misspelled wrong. So,
Well,
and then it goes off into another thing. So I just put it on closed caption. That has helped me so much. Closed caption.
awesome. That's what I'm saying. Now you're
Yeah.
reading this stuff, and
Yes.
you left brain that even without asking me. You literally left brained that without even asking me how to do it. That's brilliant, because verbal involvement, reading, writing, rather than listening. I'm a listener. I prefer listening. Reading it's so left brain stimulating. I don't even know why you asked me the question, sister. You already know.
I just, yeah, you helped me come to that, that idea, just listening to you. Thank you.
Yeah. No,
I
you're
have a
welcome.
question from one of the sisters here. What if you're a person, she says, that's right brain,
Yeah.
you look at things from all angles,
Yes, you do.
all point where you actually believe what you think about a situation or about a person. I mean, you looking at it from all points, every angle, the good, the bad, and then you actually start to believe whatever you picture in your mind for it to be.
Right.
What would you say about a person like that? And by the way, I'm like that too.
Yeah.
What do you say about a person like that?
That is, there's a lot of research. Really
it's called overthinking. That's
without
what
a doubt.
they tell me, that I overthink too much.
But I don't, in this case, the way that sister described it is not overthinking. When you believe what you're thinking, I'm cool with that, especially if you looked at it from a global perspective. Because what happens is the right brain incorporates so much extra information that the right brain should be the final decision maker. The right brain is your intuition. The right brain, I didn't mention it before, but remember this. Your right brain is intuition and responsible for your gut feelings. Most people should believe their gut feelings. If your dog is barking and growling in these movies, right? They act directors and writers, the dog's growling. What's that mean? Danger, doesn't it? In the movies, the animals run, the cats run, or clear, the dogs bark and growl. Don't go to the front door, right? Don't go to the front door. Get out, hide, pretend you're not home, whatever the case. When the dog growls, dogs don't rationalize. They believe their gut feelings. And sister, I got to tell you, there's this is one of the most informative right brain, left brain books. It's The Master. I mentioned it today. The Master and His Emissary. The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist, PhD, over in Europe. I think he lives in Ireland. There's a whole section I just read the other day putting my right brain, left brain stuff together.
She said that it causes problems in her personal relationship with her husband, because she says he tells her all the time, you're overthinking. I didn't do that. That's not what happened. I had to do this or I had to do that. I wasn't doing what you thought. So she said, is that a bad thing? Then she usually follows her gut, as you say. But it ends up causing problems in her relationship with her.
There are two things there. Number one, I'm a big fan of believing your gut feelings. Number two, think about what takes place then. If gut feelings are good, right? And something makes you anxious, like the dog growling at the front door. The idea is, what would be the weakness of that strength? The weakness would then be, you go with your gut feelings, but you let that override the logic of everything, and you let the emotions take control. Sister, I would recommend what you do is then within your own head, move it from emotional, because you're, oh my God, and all these negatives. Oh my God, he's starting to get home at 4 o'clock at 6 o'clock rather than 4 o'clock. So those 2 hours, and the right brain, safety, fear, that stuff. Without the left brain telling you, Well, I noticed that paycheck's gotten bigger. It's true, he's working overtime. Okay, so there was a car accident. I can verify that. And, in Florida, you can look at the FHP website. There are so many. What you want to do is with the right brain, it's easier, believe it or not, to move over and stimulate the left brain. I'm a big fan of creating lists of positives and negatives. In a relationship, a big thing for me is when you start questioning your partner, your spouse, when you start questioning your spouse or your kids, literally create the list of why you trusted them enough to let that child go out and hang out with their friends. Why did you marry this man or this woman? What were all the positives? Because I know after you get into the groove with somebody, they talk about a 7-year thing, a 10-year thing, all these little things. You start getting comfortable with that person. And if you're truly in love and all the emotions that may grow, because correct me if I'm wrong, sister, it's not about marrying for love. It's about marrying for piety. It's about marrying someone treating them with respect and kindness. If they're still treating you with respect and kindness, you grow into love. There's also a point where you're going to upset each other once in a while, or maybe an extended upset. And you can't let that right brain take over and let because the right brain's always on. You can't let that right brain take over and create fear and anxiety all the time. Make that left brain active and start listing all the reasons that you married this person. List all the reasons that you love them. List all these reasons why you trusted them enough to commit your whole life. And remember, in Islam, we don't say that stuff about till death do us part, because we know we will be with our loved ones in Jannah, won't we? Inshallah. So this is, why did you commit your entire future to this person, and start listing that stuff too. I know it's not easy. It's absolutely not easy. But if you can push from the right to the left, that's why I spend so much time on hemisphericity. If you can push from the right and create a left brain action, like, again, write it down, verbalize it. Oh my God, I'm going to spend the next 3 minutes, like when we're done here or right away, turn me off and say, I'm going to spend the next 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I'm going to list all this guy's good qualities. I'm going to list every one of them. I'm done with it. I'm going to list every single good quality and then see how I feel. The right brain is always on, so you have to activate the left. And that's what I mean. You start wondering, oh, why are they late? But they've got a bigger paycheck. It's probably overtime, is an example. And if you can do that and go activate your left, and like I said, verbal and writing is a real easy way to do it. Count on your right hand because that's left brain control. Do things that stimulate the left brain and understand you got a right brain strength. Go with your gut, but it better be logical. Like my kids, when I was raising them as little kids, I think kids are great with gut feelings. And I always told them, growing up as a Catholic and stuff, and in the whole non-Muslim world, I was worried sick about, having kids. And I'm a guy, and I'm really like stereotypically guy a lot. I got to protect my kids. Oh my God. And you know how you are as parents. And I always told my kids as they were growing, and people want to hug and do all that stuff, I was never a big hugger. So for me, it wasn't an issue. And I told my kids, if you don't want to hug that auntie or that uncle, don't. And if they keep asking for one, run over, grab my leg as little kids, and I'd say, I'll tell them no. That they're hugging me or they're grabbing onto dad, I should be their safety place. And that was their gut feeling, and they'd run to me. And that was because I believe in a child's gut feelings. And then my kids later, they grew into they could trust my daughter. I asked her, why haven't I had a Me Too moment with either of my girls or any of my 4 kids, my boys too? And they said, Dad, because you told us that we can be separate, that we can be ourselves, that we can say no, that you trained it into us. And I was like, okay, cool. So they learned to trust the gut feelings and to take an action step. So they were never overwhelmed, if I can say that. They were never overwhelmed with fear.